Hello, hello. Give me just one moment here to get this going. How's everybody doing today? Welcome, welcome. My name is Bryan Peterson, and I am with Achieve, Grow, Succeed Coaching. And I just wanted to welcome you to the Life Coach University platform, where coaches from around the world are on a mission to coach millions more. All that we ask is that you pay it forward. We just want to see the biggest gift giving ripple of gift giving to go on. And we don't care how you do it. And it all starts with each of us giving back in the communities that we're in. So we don't care how you give it back. You can use this coaching to enhance yourself. You could teach somebody what you learned today. You can share with somebody about the Life Coach University. You could hug somebody, you could make them laugh, you could pay for somebody's coffee. It really doesn't matter. We just ask that you join us in paying it forward and helping us make this the type of world that we want to live in, one that is full of joy, love, peace, and meaningful connection. Thank you for being you. Thank you for joining me here today. You are amazing. And let's dive into today's topic of discussion, how to build and break habits. Now, first, before we start, I wanted to let you know that I will be pausing several times through this. Okay, there's Q&A, folks. To recap stuff and to ask if you have any questions or if there's anything that you'd like me to go over again, and I could do that for you. And then also, I've got a lot to share with you today. So I've got some notes in front of me here, and I'll occasionally be looking down on those to help keep me on track, because sometimes I have a tendency when I get on subjects like this that I really love to talk about, I tend to go on. And so in order to get the information to you, because there is a lot of information, I've got some notes here. So I know you probably hopped on here because you want to create a habit of some kind, or you simply want to break a bad habit, right? And I'm definitely going to help you with that. But I wanted to start first by laying a little foundation and a little framework. I wanted to go into why habits are important and how they actually work. So this can help you better understand things as I'm going over them, as I'm going through the steps on how to create them and how to break them down. And then maybe it might help you impact you a little bit more as well, so that you'll actually start creating habits in the first place. Okay, so here are 3 reasons why habits are crucial and you need to focus on them. Okay, reason number 1 is habits determine your results. Okay, so everything we do from the time that we wake up to the time that we go to bed, during that time, our outcomes and our results are determined by everything that we do, right? Everything that we do in between those 2 times. And the majority of stuff that you do during those times are automatic habits. And these could look like anywhere from the way you dry off after you get out of the shower, to the way you brush your teeth, to the way you drive to work. There's a ton of these automatic habits on there. And actually, studies show that 95% of your day is run on these automatic habits. So you can see how getting control of your habits would be a real good help, right? And then reason number 2 is habits are essentially who you are, right? You are literally like the sum of all your habits combined, both physical and mental, good and bad. Like they make up who you are. Like if you have a habit of exercising, that affects who you are. If you have a habit of drinking and smoking, that's going to affect who you are. If you have a habit of negative thinking, that's going to affect who you are. And if you have a habit of, let's say, coming up with excuses versus coming up with solutions, that's definitely going to affect who you are as well. So ultimately, the habits create the results in your life, both you and the circumstances that you have. So if you're ever wondering sometimes, like, why am I stuck in this, why is life happening to me in this way? Or why does this thing always keep happening to me? chances are it's because of your habits. And I say chances are because life also likes to throw surprise things at us, like accidents and different things that happen. But the majority of the time, it is your habits that are controlling things. And reason number 3 why habits are important is because habits are the building blocks for success. So I want you to picture the foundation that you're walking through life on, and then you're moving through each day on. The foundation is built with blocks of habits. That's why so many successful people out there have morning routines or nightly routines, because they know that if they get started off on the right foot in the morning and they're going the right direction, that chances are they're going to have success in the rest of their day. And they also know that if they've got a routine at night where they start to break everything down, they evaluate their day, things that worked, and that they can get themselves better and ready and set up for the morning. So these are like foundational blocks that they have. And so the having more foundational habits in place will help you to keep you from stumbling throughout the day. And it's actually going to help you create more success. So you can see that if you put these together, that if habits are controlling, or if habits determine the majority of your results in life, and they also determine a lot of your success, you can see why they're really important for you to pay attention to, okay? And as an added bonus, habits can actually take the place of motivation, because we're going to talk a lot about motivation today. And don't worry, you don't need a lot of it to build your habits, and that's the beauty of this. But once you get a habit in place and it's ingrained and you do it enough, it becomes second nature. So if you repeat it enough, and you do it enough, it's like second nature. Like when you get out of the shower, you don't have to think about how you're going to dry off. You just grab the towel and you start drying off, and you may be daydreaming about something else. The way it could take the place of motivation would be like, let's say if you have a habit of, as soon as you get home, the first thing you do is you go into your workout room, you put on your workout clothes, and you exercise. You may have a day where you're not quite feeling it, you're not quite feeling on, and you're thinking, God, I don't want to work out today. And all of a sudden you get home, and next thing you know, you've already got your workout clothes on and you're in the middle of the workout. So habits can override your motivation in that sense. So that's a little added bonus on there. So how do habits work? So habits are basically just repeated behaviors that happen over and over and over again. And so I wanted to talk a little bit briefly how behaviors work so that you understand that. And 2 books that highly influenced me and what you're going to learn today in this course, and that helped me instill the habits that I have, and then habits for my clients as well, are Atomic Habits by James Clear and Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. So a lot of what you're going to hear today comes from those. But according to Atomic Habits, there are 4 steps in the behavioral loop, or the behavioral process. And step 1 is that there's a cue. There's got to be some sort of trigger that triggers the behavior. There is a craving, which is a desire or the motivation for doing the behavior in the first place. There is the response, which is the behavior itself. And then there's the reward. So like, what do I actually get from the behavior? What's the result? Do I feel better? Am I more excited? So those are the 4 things in the habit loop. And then the book, Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, he likes to take them and he puts them in a different kind of formula, but basically incorporates the same thing. In his book, he says that behavior happens when 3 things come together at the same time. And those 3 things are motivation, ability, and prompt. So the prompt would be like the cue that it happens. And what he says is that you have to have motivation to do something. So like there needs to be a desire to do the behavior in the first place. And this motivation starts at low and goes all the way up to high and fluctuates in between. And then we also have to have an ability to do the behavior. And that ability can fluctuate from it's easy to do or all the way to hard to do when it comes to the behavior. And then there needs to be a prompt. There needs to be something that triggers us to doing it in the first place. So to kind of give you an example of how these work, I want to take the example of going to the bathroom, because I think everybody can relate to going to the bathroom, and this one's kind of a funny one anyway. So what is the prompt that is cueing you to go to the bathroom, right? It's that feeling you get when you've got to pee really bad, right? And so what's the motivation or the craving behind it? That is, I don't want to pee myself, so I want to go to the bathroom. And then we have to have ability to do it according to Tiny Habits. And so I need to know that the bathroom is accessible and it's there right away. And when all three of those things come together, then the behavior actually happens. So essentially, when some sort of cue or trigger happens in our lives, we perform a behavior and then we get some sort of result. And then inside of that, there is a craving or a motivation or a desire to do this in the first place. And I want to talk a little bit about the relationship between motivation and ability, because it really affects whether or not we succeed in getting this habit started. So if your motivation is really high, when the cue happens for you to do it, like when the cue happened for me to go to the bathroom, my motivation needed to be really high in order for me to do it. But your ability doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter. Like, I will find a place to go if I have to go that bad, right? But on the flip side, if your motivation is low when the cue happens, your ability really does matter. Like, it needs to be easy. And I'll give you an example of this. Say there's a new habit you want to start, and that habit is running. And you tell yourself that you're going to run 5 miles each day. And you're going to do this right after you get home. So right after you get home is the prompt or the cue. And then you're going to run 5 miles. But the ability to do it, so running 5 miles isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do ability-wise, since you haven't done it in a while. So when you get home, you better be highly motivated to do it. Otherwise, you may not run at all. So that's where the relationship comes in. And if you're going to need high motivation to do a harder task or a harder habit that's in front of you. So both these formulas are universal. They're going to work with both good and bad habits, or any habits that you want to build out there, or any behaviors, as a matter of fact. So if you want to quit smoking, it's in there too. But the great thing about these formulas is that they allow us to break down and understand what's actually going on, which is going to help us with the last topic today, which is actually breaking bad habits. Okay, so a quick recap here, and then we'll go to any questions if anybody has any questions. Habits are the foundation of our success, and they're instrumental in creating the results that we get in life. And there's a simple formula that we can follow to help create new habits and to understand why we have our bad habits. So I'm going to pause for a second. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in there. A couple moments. I don't see anything on there. So if you have a question about this, I'll be pausing again here soon to see if you have any more. So what are the steps to building habits? The first thing that I want to suggest that you do is that you start tracking. Hang on a sec, we've got a question. For years. Okay. Yep, I completely understand. For years. For years, I tried to quit smoking. Oh yeah, absolutely. And you're going to learn how to figure out the cues that are triggering that later on. So, yep. So the first thing that I want you to do is to start tracking your behaviors. So for the next at least week to, if not a month, what I want you to do is I want you to start tracking your behaviors from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. And I want you to track, break it down for, I did mine every half an hour when I first did it, but you can do every hourly. So what are you physically doing during that time? What are you mentally thinking? What's going on? What's happening? I want you to track all those things, because what's going to happen is at the end of the week or the month, you're going to have a snapshot in front of you of how you're getting all the results in your life. and you're going to have basically a list of everything you're doing all day. So you're going to get a sneak peek into like some habits that you may want to get rid of, some habits that are working for you that you want to create more of, and you want to do that, right? So now let's jump in. So what are the steps to building habits? I call it like designing our behavior. I don't like to necessarily look at this like we're creating habits, but more like we're designing behaviors to achieve whatever it is we're trying to achieve in our life. So whether you're here to break a habit or build a habit, it doesn't matter. You've got a goal in mind. That's why you came here. There's something that you want to do or achieve or become. And so that's what we need to define first. And so that's what step one is. Step one is we need to define the results that you're looking for. Like, what outcome do you want? What is your aspiration? And why are you doing it? So do you want to lose weight? Do you want to be less stressed? Do you want to have better relationships? Do you want to learn a new skill or ability? We need to define that in the very beginning, and we need to be as detailed as possible, because the clearer the goal is, the better ideas or the better options we're going to have at solving it. So an example of this might be like your goal or aspiration might be to, I want to live a healthier life. And if that's all you have written down, then when it comes to options and habits that you need to build to do that, you may think, okay, to live a healthier life, what do I do, right? Do I eat better? I guess I could eat better, and then I guess I could exercise. So it kind of limits your options. But when you start getting into the details and asking yourself questions like, what does a healthier life look like? What does it feel like? What does it require me to do? And we need those details. Like, do I need to have less toxic relationships? Do I need to be outdoors more? Do I need to, just details like that. And we don't necessarily need to figure out how we're going to get those results yet. We just need to paint a clear picture of what we want to get, right? Or as I would like to say, we need a picture for the puzzle we're getting ready to put together, because you can't put together a puzzle unless you have a picture on the box. And the first thing I like to do when I'm putting together a puzzle is I like to put together the outline. So that's what we're doing in step one here. We're building the picture for the puzzle, and we're putting together the outline so that all we have left is to fill in the middle pieces. And then we need to determine why. Like, why are we doing this in the first place? Why are you trying to create this change in your life? We need to get clear on this from the very beginning, because the deeper your why and the stronger your why, the more leverage you're going to have later on to get yourself to follow through with the habits that we're doing. Okay, so this is going to lead us to step two. So step one, let's define clearly what it is we're looking for. Step two, here's where we're going to explore options on how to achieve the goal in step one. Now, you may be coming here, you may already have a habit in mind that you want to build, but I highly recommend you take the time to follow all these steps, and including this step right here, because this will help determine if you've got the best habit to start with, okay? All right, so now that we have the goal or the outcome clearly defined, we need to figure out a way to achieve it. So here is where we're going to explore all the possible behaviors and all the possible things that are going to allow us to do it. So you're going to brainstorm at this point, and you're going to write down anything that you think can help. So living a healthier life in the previous example might look like exercising more, spending more time outdoors, spending more time with family, building better relationships, getting rid of toxic relationships. So you want to list all these things. And now it's important to note here that we're not committing to anything. These aren't the things that we're actually going to be doing yet. So we haven't committed. So I want you to write down every single one that you can possibly think of. And a couple things that can help you to do this is after everything, just keep going, what else? What else can I do? You can ask yourself several questions. What are some things that I would just have to do one time? Might help you come up with some things. Like if you were trying to eat better, one thing you might do would be to get rid of all the junk food in your cabinets. okay? And then you could ask yourself, what are some things that I would have to stop doing? And then you can also ask yourself, what are some things that I need to create habits for that are going to help me with this? And finally, if once you run out of all your own personal options, go ahead and ask other people, like ask your friends, your family, your neighbors. You can get on social media. One of the favorite questions that I like to post on there is, if you could get me to do one behavior that would help me achieve blank, whatever it is you're trying to achieve, what would that be? And you'd be surprised at the number of responses that you're going to get that are outside of the box that you have there. So, okay. So now we've got this list of possibilities that are going to help us achieve our goal, right? What I want you to do now is just go through, and any ones that are very vague, I need you to get a little bit more crisp and clear on there. Like when we said exercise above, just don't write, I need to exercise. Write the types of exercises that you would need to do. Like I would need to do cardio 3 times a week, or I would need to do strength training twice a week. And that could either be in the gym or it could be rock climbing. So get a little bit clear on those, because this is going to help us better when we get to step 3. And step 3, this is a huge step. Step 3 is where we choose the best behavior that matches you. And here's where a ton of it goes wrong. A ton of people go wrong when they're trying to build habits and achieve something. The normal, regular ways that we use to choose the habits are sometimes that we just randomly pick one, or we just guess, right? Like, yeah, I'm going to start doing this. Yeah, that sounds right. I need to eat better, so I'm going to do this. Or we think, hey, a friend did it and they had success, so I'm going to try that. Yeah, my friend did this to diet, and so I'm going to try that and see if it works for me. Or my favorite one is that I got it off the internet. I Googled it, and Google told me that this is the most important thing for me to do and start first. And so that's what they start with. But there's several reasons why that a lot of those ways and a lot of those habits, when you do it that way, fail to take hold. One of them is sometimes they can be too hard or difficult for you to perform. Another reason would be maybe some of them don't have as much impact for you. And then the biggest one is you're not always motivated to do them, okay? So how do we avoid these problems? How do we avoid finding something that we're not going to be motivated to do, or something that's not going to have as much impact? Is you actually pick the choices that match you and your circumstances. And here's where it gets interesting and fun. So you want to take all those choices that you did, or that you got in step 2, and you want to sort them into by a couple different methods. And I like to take, at this point, I like to take and put all my choices on index cards, because the next 2 things, you're going to categorize them. And the first thing you're going to do with all the choices is you're going to ask yourself, would this behavior, or whatever it is that I'm doing, is this going to have a high impact on what I'm trying to achieve, or is this going to have a low impact? And you can simply write that on the card. And then the next category would be sorting by motivation and your ability to do it. And so during this one, you're going to ask the question, can I get myself to do this? And it's simple. It's yes or no. So then go back and through all those cards, you're going to write yes or no. But the answer that you give here is key in helping you get this habit off the ground. Because if you hesitate at all with your yes, that's a sign. So like if you say, maybe one of the things that you have to stop doing is I've got to give up ice cream. And you ask the question, can I stop doing this? Or can I do this? Can I stop eating ice cream? And you're like, yeah, I can stop. But you have that little grimace, right? That little grimace is telling you something. Because what you want to do is you want to sort things by, do I want to do this behavior versus should I do this behavior? Hang on one second. I keep coughing all the time. That's going to be fun in the replay. Because a key to the long-lasting change, if you're trying to build a habit and make change for the long term, is starting something that you want to do in the beginning versus something that you should do. Okay, so now that we've sorted them, you basically want to go through now and pick all the behaviors that landed. So look at all the cards you have and grab all the ones that say high impact and yes, I could get myself to do them. And here it is. You now have a group of choices that actually have the best potential to succeed, because not only are they going to have a better opportunity for impact, which results actually give you more confidence, right? And they're going to be things that you actually get yourself to do because you said you wanted to do them, or that you could get yourself to do them, right? So great. Step 2 or step 3 is we've got a list of highly potential things that we can do. How do we get started? So we're going to do basically a recipe for each one. And the recipe for each one looks like as follows. We're going to pick a tiny thing to do, and then we're going to figure out a time to do it or a prompt to do it. Okay. And how are we going to do this? We're going to make it easy by starting tiny. That's step 4. Make it easy by starting tiny. Okay. So one of the biggest reasons why people fail to follow through with any of the habits or any of the new things that they're trying to create anyway is because they're not motivated to do it. How many of you out there right now, if you could raise your hand, if you're motivated all day, every day, right? I doubt anybody out there is raising their hand. I know I would. I can't tell you how many times, personally myself, where I'm super pumped to do something. I can get myself motivated. I could read a book and get myself motivated to do something. And then all of a sudden I wake up the next morning and I've got no motivation whatsoever to do it, right? So motivation is huge. So how do you take motivation out of the equation then? You do it by, hang on one second. Okay, so yeah, how do you take emotion or motivation out of the equation, right? Remember the formula that we talked about before in the relationship between motivation and ability. When it came to doing behaviors, we need to make the ability easy to do, because if the motivation is low, then our ability to do it needs to be really easy. Like think about, like if you're super motivated and you go to the gym, it's easy to work out, right? But if you're not motivated and you go to the gym, you better be doing something really easy and they're like jumping some rope or something. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. Okay, so how do we make it? We're going to make it easy. And how do we do this? We do it by making it tiny. So let's take the example that we did very early on when we talked about running. We wanted to run 5 miles. Our prompt was going to be when we get home from work, we're going to run 5 miles. So how do we make it tinier? How do we make it easier? Instead of 5 miles, you can make it 1 mile, or make it even tinier than that. And you could say, I'm just going to run around the block. Because here's the kicker, is that performing the actual habit is actually what gives you the boost of confidence that's going to lead you to wanting to do it again. So the very first day that you set this goal and you come home, you get home from work, you put your running shoes on and you go around the block and you're like excited, yes, I did it. And then you do this for a week, all of a sudden you're highly motivated and you're just going to keep doing it again and again. And how many times have you quit on a habit because the very first day that you went to do it, it was just either simply too hard to do or required too much. And maybe you did it one time and then you just even stopped, right? It happens all the time. But by starting tiny, I just saw my cat in the background there, how funny. But by starting tiny, the habit is going to grow itself, right? So I want you to think of it as the new habit that you're doing is planting a seed for a tree that you want to grow, right? And every time you water that tree, it's going to grow and it's going to get bigger. But we want that tree to survive in any type of conditions, right? So we want our habit to be able to survive in any type of conditions, whatever life throws at us. So how does a tree make it through a hurricane, right? Like think of your life as just handing you mess after mess, but you still want to keep your habit going. Is the tree has deep roots. It has roots that and a solid foundation. And how do we create that with the habit? Every time we repeat the habit, every time we do it, the roots go deeper. And every time we do it, it becomes easier. And if it becomes easier, we like to do it, and then we're going to repeat it. And so this is actually going to keep the momentum going on it. And then what happens if you repeat it enough, it becomes more second nature. And then that goes back to what I said earlier, is that habits can override your motivation. And so now when that storm in your life hits and you don't feel like doing it, you've repeated the habit enough that it takes over and it overrides that, right? So another thing that Tiny does to help with the habits is it snowballs on its own. So what eventually happens is that that very initial thing that you did where you ran around the block one time, and then you did it again the next day, and then the next day. So after a week, you've done it for a week, and you're really pumped up that you've kept up with this habit for a week, but all of a sudden it's too easy for you to do. And so now you could step it up a notch, and you can run 2 blocks, or you can run a mile, or 3 miles, or 5 miles, or next thing you know, you're running a marathon. But here's where the fine line kicks in, where we want to make sure that as it starts to snowball, that we don't bite off more than we can chew, right? We don't want to jump from running around the block, which was easy to do, to 10 miles, because all of a sudden you're going to come home one day and you're not going to have any motivation and you won't do it. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're riding that fine line between is it pushing me to excel and get better so that I get the impact that I'm looking for, and it's also I'm motivated to do it. Okay, so we've solved the motivation part of it. Now, what if we forget to do it? Like we've got this all set up. I know what I'm going to do. I know I'm going to start Tiny. I'm going to start running around the block. But now I can't remember to get myself to do it. So there's a couple things that you can do to that. You can try setting alarms, or you can put notes all over the place, and these kind of help. But I want to share one trick that you can do that's a fail-safe that can get you to start and keep going with any habit that you want to do. And that's called habit stacking. Is basically you want to stack your new habit on top of an old habit, or right after you do another habit. And it's going to look something like you pick a habit that you do every day, and then you start the new habit right after that. So the example that I've got right here would be, after I make my bed, I'm going to do 20 push-ups. So I'm trying to install a habit of exercising, but I can't get myself to do it. So I'm going to make it easy on myself by saying, after I make and this is assuming you make your bed in the morning, so it's got to be something that you do every day, is after I make my bed, I'm going to do 20 push-ups. And then the next week, after you do that for a week, after I make my bed, I'm going to do 20 push-ups and 20 sit-ups. So basically at this point is we're going to write out a recipe, and it's going to look like, after blank, I will blank. And so then you're going to have a recipe card here for all the habits that you're trying to get going to achieve that outcome. Remember, in step 1, we defined what it was that we wanted to do. And so we're going to write out a recipe for each one of these things to get it going, and then we can start implementing them one at a time. Okay, so we've defined our goal. We've brainstormed choices. We picked the best one that was suited for us. We started Tiny. Now what do we do? So this next step is probably one of the most overlooked ones, and it's celebrating. And you're thinking, like the majority of people I tell this, you're like, what does celebrating have to do with it? This is like probably the most overlooked one, but the most important one if you were to ask me. And if you were to ask me why, because it feels good. We need to start celebrating everything in our lives. We have a tendency as humans and as people to basically spend an immense amount of time pointing out the things that we do wrong and beating ourselves up for it, because we think that if we beat ourselves up for it, that's going to motivate us to do it even more. But actually that has the opposite effect. Studies have shown that the harder you beat yourself up on it, the less likely you are to do it again. And what celebrating does is celebrating Celebrating actually shoots a shot of dopamine to your brain that will actually help you hardwire it into your brain. Now, I'm not going to go into the neuroscience of it, although I would love to, but your brain basically attaches a reward value to everything that you do. And the higher the reward value, the more likely it is to repeat the behavior. And of course, if you repeat that behavior, it gets easier and easier, and you're more likely to do it again. So right after whatever it is you do, you want to celebrate. And I want to get clear on celebrating versus an incentive, because a lot of people ask me at this point, so is the reward like, hey, if I exercise for a couple of weeks, I can take myself out to dinner? Or if I hit my money goal in my business, can I take a trip? Is that it? And I'm like, no, that's more an incentive versus a reward. Because I looked this up. The definition of reward behavior in science is an experience directly related to the behavior that makes the behavior more likely to happen. So this reward needs to happen right after the behavior, and your brain needs to associate it with the behavior. But what rewards work for some people may not work for you. So this is kind of like a tedious part of it, is identifying the rewards that work for you. Now, some people, some of my clients, a fist pump and shouting victory does it for them. Or some of them would be like, I did the 20 push-ups, and they do a little dance, and that works for them. That gives them the shot of dopamine that they're looking for. Or some of them will do a high five in the mirror. Mel Robbins wrote a whole book on that, The High Five Habit, that talks about how important it is to motivate yourself, right? But the celebration needs to be immediate, and it needs to be authentic to you. Otherwise, it'll backfire. And the reason why it backfires is because I'm going to tell you this, is that celebrating does not come naturally to lots of people, and especially celebrating the small stuff. We're not used to doing it. We're used to cracking the whip after we do something wrong. So literally, like, this is one of the biggest things that my clients tell me, that when I tell them this in the very beginning, they think it's going to be the biggest non-factor. But celebrating turns out to actually be the biggest thing that helped them achieve long-lasting results. Okay? And celebrating actually goes a longer way into creating a better relationship with yourself. So you actually look yourself in the mirror and you're proud of who you see. So between doing the behavior itself, performing it, which gives you encouragement and confidence, celebrating is actually, when you do those two together, you're actually raising the credit score with yourself. I love this. I don't know who shared this with me, but we have a credit score with ourselves, just like we have a credit score with the financial industry. And this is such a great analogy. Like, think about how when you have a very high credit score with your financial stuff, you could leverage more things. You have more opportunities. The interest rates are lower. Well, it's the same thing when you have a very high credit rate with yourself. You can now leverage your own confidence more. You could leverage your own courage and things like that to get yourself to do it. And making those deposits by celebrating every time and actually performing the habit is going to do that for you. So step 6, and then after this, we'll stop. I see that there's a couple questions on there. I'm definitely going to get to those. But step 6 is the final one, is problem solving. It's problem solving, right? Because not everything that we do, the very first attempt that we do it, actually works. In fact, most of the time, this is not the way it happens. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to evaluate the new habit every step of the way. And to simply do this is we need to evaluate each of the parts of the formula. So what was the cue or the prompt? What is the craving or the desire or the motivation behind it? What is the reward? And what is the ability? We need to look at all those things. So it may be something simple as, if you forgot to do the habit, then it's the prompt needs to be adjusted. Like, you set an alarm, but the alarm keeps going off and you still don't do it. So we need to figure out a better prompt. And you can figure that out. You can figure that out by just trying new prompts, trying new things to do it. And that's why I love the stacking of the habits, because these are things that you do every day, right? What if you remember to do it, but you just don't end up doing it, right? Like the prompt works, it's like, hey, it's time for me to work out, but I just don't work out. So here is where we need to dive into looking at the craving or the desire that we're looking in the reward, right? So we want to check out the motivation and the ability. But motivation, like I said, fluctuates a lot. Like one day you wake up and you've got no motivation, and one day you wake up and you've got a lot. So what we'd rather focus on, what I teach people is that we want to focus on your ability to do it. We want to start digging around in there and see what we can come up with. So I start by asking myself 5 questions around that. And the questions involve time, money, physical effort, mental effort, and then routine. So it would be like, do I have enough time to do it? Do I have enough money to do it? Am I physically able to do it? And this one for me, this one always gets me. Does the behavior require a lot of mental energy? Because there's a lot of things that I want to do, but they just require me to mentally think about, and that may stop me from doing it. And then the final one is, does the behavior fit into your current routine, or are you having to make a bunch of adjustments to do it? That could be a reason why, right? But by asking these questions and lasering in on the root of the problem, we're going to be able to come up with more solutions. And so we brainstorm new things, new ways to tweak the habit. If we didn't have enough time to do it, maybe I can shrink the amount of time. If I didn't have enough money, maybe I could find something cheaper, or I could do something else that would be the equivalent instead, right? So there's all kinds of things that you can do to do this. Oh, okay, sorry. That's the first one you need to do when it comes to the ability, is go through those 5 questions, and that will usually help you solve it. But there's 3 other things that you could do that could help you with your ability. You can increase your skills to help you make it easier. You can find tools and resources that will help you. And this is my favorite though. This is by far the best one. You can make the behavior even tinier. So I want to take that habit that we did earlier, that we started running, right? And let's say that your goal is and you made it, I just want to run around the block. And you can't even get yourself to do that. The prompt is working. Every time you get home, you remember to go run, but you can't get yourself to do it. So start tinier. At this point, make the goal, okay, I'm just going to put on my running shoes, and let that be the behavior and the habit that you try to instill first. And I know there's a lot of people say, hey, that's not going to have a lot of impact. But remember how they snowball. If we actually do it and perform it, that leads to giving us confidence and motivation, and then we're more likely to repeat it. So after a week of coming home and simply walking through the door, putting on your running shoes, and then taking them off and celebrating all week, because we celebrate, remember, by the end of the week, you're going to be like, hey, that was easy. I want to do a little bit more now than just putting on my shoes. And so now maybe you put on your shoes, and the next tiny part of it is you run to the end of the driveway and back. And then after you do that for a week, you run around the block, and then you let it snowball to that effect. So I want to recap. The step 1 is we define what it is we're trying to accomplish. Step 2 is we simply brainstorm a bunch of opportunities or behaviors of the ways in which we could do it. Step 3 is we actually pick the behavior that best matches us and our circumstances, and that has been more likely to succeed. Step 4 is we write out a recipe for it and we make it tiny. Step 5 is we celebrate. And then step 6 is we evaluate it afterwards. So hang on, I'm going to look at these questions. Okay. So somebody said, sometimes I'm not even motivated to do the thing, even though I love doing it. For example, I love riding my bike, but I have to talk myself into it each time that I go. So yeah. So if you start off by doing that and making it tiny, like you're just going to ride your bike around the block, chances are that, and you're going to be okay with that, right? But chances are when you hop on that bike and you get halfway around the block, now you're going to be fine, right? I used to tell people that didn't want to read, I was like, make the goal just to open the book and read the first paragraph, or just read one sentence, because I guarantee you when you open that book and you read one sentence, you're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna read more. So yeah, that was great. And then another one said, I like that. Repeating a habit is like deepening the roots of a tree. Yes, every time you repeat it, that's what makes it stronger. And what we're looking for here is to try to build really strong habits that can withstand any kind of things that life throw at us. So thank you for that. And somebody put in here, as a kid, I used to play the piano. My teacher would take a ruler and hit my fingers when I was playing the wrong note. I never want to practice. I thought I wasn't musical. Now, as an adult, I'm learning the electric bass. I practice it every day, and I can still hear myself say that I'm not musical. And that's fine. That's what happens when we use the stick instead of the carrot to motivate us. So that's why it's important to find behaviors that we're actually going to do. And that's what step 3 of the process was making sure that you're actually going to do the behavior. And once you keep repeating it enough, like you keep playing and practicing, you're going to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, no, I am a musician, and I'm darn good at it too, right? And then somebody put, your cat is so cute. Thank you. And then all parents should be watching this. I see so many parents who criticize their children when they do things. How do you celebrate something when the thing you've done is not what you'd like? Well, you could celebrate the fact that you actually did it. But I do highly encourage you that you try doing something that you like. And this is for the parents out there. I would definitely collaborate with your kids, because if your kid and open up that line of communication to make sure that you're not just having the kid do something that you want to do to perpetuate your dreams and your goals. They need to be your kids' goals. So if you can align yourself with something that the kid wants to do, then the kid's actually going to do it. So that would be a way to get around that. And I appreciate those questions. So, okay, so we're going to jump into how to break habits, and then we'll have another spot to answer some more questions after that. And I know for a lot of you, you probably came in here because there's probably something that you're doing every day that you just want to stop doing. I know somebody mentioned smoking before, and so this is going to help you out when it comes to that. So the reason why I talked about how behaviors worked and how to build the habits is, in order to break a habit, all we're going to do is reverse engineer the habit itself. So remember in the beginning there, when I had you track all of your habits for like a week or a month, we're going to do the same thing here, except for all we're going to do is we're going to just track the bad habit. And what we want to do is we want to figure out all the different things in that behavioral loop. What's the cue? What's the trigger to getting us to do the habit? What is the craving or the motivation or the desire to do it? And then what's the reward? Those are the 3 things, because your response and how you do it is what you're trying to fix. So if we could figure out what the cue is, then we could either insert a different behavior to see if we could find a different reward, right? But we have to know what the craving is in the first place. So there's an experimental process that we're going to be going through when we do that. But first, we need to figure out the cue. What's the prompt? What's the trigger? And so in order to do this, I want you to track 5 things, okay? I want you to track the time of the day you do it, who you're with, what is going on or what just happened, what you're feeling at the time, and what your location is. Okay, so all of these are going to help you out. And then what we're going to do is, once we narrow it down to one of those, then we're going to figure out what the reward is. And we're going to do that by picking another, brainstorming another group of activities that we could do to replace the we're going to brainstorm a number of new things that you could do that can replace the behavior that they're doing to see if it satisfies that reward. And I want to give you an example of my own life here. When I was in the restaurant industry for 30 plus years. And so when I started coaching full-time from home, I'd be sitting at the desk here, and then all of a sudden I would find myself in the kitchen snacking on something. And then 2 hours later, I'd be like, I didn't get anything done. What happened? I had this bad habit of wandering off to snack on something, and then I would start doing busy stuff around the house. So I had to start figuring it out. So I started asking myself, what time of the day was it? Was it a certain time of the day? Nope. Who was I with? Well, I'm here by myself. I'm just with my cat, right? And so what's going on? What was happening at the time? Nope. There wasn't anything specific that was doing it. And then when I got to what are you feeling at the time, I landed on it. Because every time I would get up and go to the kitchen, I was either feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, or anxious. And so I had nailed down the trigger. And now I had to figure out what the reward was that I was trying to do by avoiding it. And so after a little bit of tinkering with that, what I figured out was that by walking away and eating and then avoiding what I was doing, that anxiety feeling would go down again. So my reward by doing this behavior, this quote unquote bad behavior, was I didn't feel anxious anymore, right? But unfortunately, I would come back and get ready to work again, and my anxiety would have doubled at that time. So what did I do? I actually started brainstorming ideas at this point of when the anxiety happened, when the trigger happened, I had to figure out something else to do other than wander over to the fridge and start snacking, right? And here's funny too, I actually got myself to, I would end up at the fridge more often than not. And so as soon as I opened the fridge, I would just ask myself, am I here because I haven't eaten in a while, which sometimes I tend to do. And if that's the case, I would go ahead and eat. But if not, I knew I was just avoiding the behavior. So my brainstorm of behaviors to try instead were maybe I could meditate for a little bit. Maybe I could go for a walk around the neighborhood. Maybe I could do breath work where I could take some deep breaths. Another one was doing timed sessions of work, or like the Pomodoro technique, where I would just time myself for 25 minutes and just bulldoze through it for 25 minutes. And I had a bunch of these. And actually what it boiled down to was there was quite a few of these that would actually work. So I can actually pick different ones. And so what you're simply going to do is you're going to simply keep repeating and inserting a different behavior each time until you find one that works. And you're going to find a better reward that actually better suits you. And then sometimes, like for smoking, it may be playing a video, it may be something else. You maybe have to go to a lesser evil of a habit first and keep downgrading until eventually you're not smoking at all, right? But the important thing here is, I implore you, is do not beat yourself up when you fail. Nothing is going to really work. You may get lucky and find something the first time and you're like, sweet, you know, like this worked, I can do it. But more often than not, you're going to have to keep reinserting a behavior on there. So remember that being hard on yourself actually deters you from doing it even more. You want to be kind to yourself. You want to give yourself some compassion. And because I would go in there and I would eat, and 2 hours later I'd have nothing done. I'd be like, Bryan, that's okay. You're one step closer to figuring it out. And as I did this, and it took me probably the better half of, I'm wanting to say, about 3 weeks to the total of about a month and a half to iron everything out. But once I did, I was on my way. And so that was great. So anyway, so that's how you break down and stop doing bad habits, is we reverse engineer them. What's the cue? What's the trigger that causes me to do the behavior? What's the craving behind it? What's the desire? What's the reward that I'm getting? And then figuring out, brainstorming a bunch of new things that you can do and inserting them one by one systematically until you find one that works for you. So take a moment here, take a drink. If you have any questions, I see that we have possibly one more. And so when I moved away from home, I saw that I picked up drinking a glass of wine. I think it was more to cope with the loneliness. How do I stop a bad habit that is actually there to help me feel not worse? I don't want to drink wine, but I also don't want to feel the loneliness. So this is what I was talking about when you need to brainstorm a bunch of behaviors that, in this case, it would be like not necessarily feeling loneliness. So when I feel these moments, is there a friend that I could start a little text with? If there's not anybody there, is there a social group that I could go virtually hang out with, or things like that? Or maybe it's play a video game or watch a documentary or something like that. I know that I like to puzzle, so I've got a little app on my iPad, and so a lot of times when I'm just wanting to relax or something, I'll do it on the iPad. So the idea is brainstorm. Try to come up with as many ideas. Ask your friends, ask your family of ideas. Like if they were trying to solve this and they were doing this, what would they do, right? And then you could try those. So someone else mentioned smoking. I no longer smoke. I was finally able to quit. I was only able to do this when I found out that I was pregnant. I quit smoking at the moment. I quit smoking at that moment. I remember I moved away from my hometown so I could just smoke where no one knew. The habit was so hard to break. Can you speak about a habit that brings about so much shame? Yeah, we've got a few minutes left. So I'll just use an example of mine. I drank a lot. So during that 30 years that I was at the restaurant industry, I used to hide a lot of my drinking, and it was really shameful. And I know that smoking and drinking are some of the harder habits to do, but I know that they can be done. So what I started to do, it was a combination of raising my credit score with myself, okay? I started to just do small things. I would make small promises to myself every day, and I would keep those promises. And that's these little habits. When you make them tiny enough, they're easy to do, and you do them every day. And when you can do them every day, that's going to give you confidence. So some of mine would have been simple, like I couldn't get myself out of bed in the morning, and so I would sleep in super late. So I just started setting like a time to get up earlier, and then I would celebrate that I got up earlier instead of sitting in there in bed with all the anxiety and the shame and the guilt that I used to drink, and I would hide my drinking in front of my wife and all those things. So once again, it comes to just brainstorming ideas and things that you could do that can replace that habit that gets you the same type of reward. Okay, and for me, the drinking, long story short, but the drinking was basically to fill a void in my life because I had a lack of fulfillment. And so what I did is I just dug deep into, which is another thing that I coach around, and maybe another topic that I could do in the future, which is fulfillment and finding your why or your purpose. Because when you get more fulfillment and you find your why and your purpose in life, you have more purpose, that's going to give you more leverage. Remember when I talked about figuring out why you're actually doing something? That's going to give you more leverage. And the deeper and the stronger it is, the more leverage it is, it's going to help you do that. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. I hope that helps somebody else in the future when they're watching this too. So anyway, we've got to get going. Are there any more questions before we get going, before I have to leave you today? So, nope. Okay. So once again, my name is Bryan Peterson. I'm a life coach with Achieve, Grow, Succeed Coaching. I help people develop a successful mindset. And once again, I'd like to remind you that this was all brought to you by the Life Coach University and its Pay It Forward platform, where coaches from around the world come to coach millions more. And it all starts with joining us and paying it forward. Like, we don't care how you do it. We just want to create the biggest ripple effect of gift giving the world has ever seen. And it all starts with each of us. It starts with me. It starts with you and the communities that we're in. And we don't care how you pay it forward. We just ask that you do it. Teach somebody what you just learned today. That would be amazing. Use what you just learned today and pay it forward to yourself. Share the Life Coach University with somebody. Buy somebody a cup of coffee. Hug somebody. Make somebody laugh. All that we ask you is that you join us in paying it forward and making this the world that we all want to live in. And that's one filled with joy, peace, love, and meaningful connection. So thank you so very much. I appreciate you. You're amazing that you actually joined us today. You have an amazing afternoon. I love you all. Bye.